Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me here at the First Alert Desk. My name is Tori Cooper, and we have an update for you today. We've been working on a few stories. Actually, we had quite a few stories to pick from today just because a lot has been going on. It has been a very busy weekend. So I compiled a list of some of the top stories that, of course, I felt you'd want to know, and just ones that stuck out to me in your local headlines. We love local news here at Atlanta News First, so let's jump right into it. Okay. All right. So again, bear with me. I'm my own producer. I'm my own director. But let's start with this because, I worked on a story a few months ago and I had a chance to, it looks like I'm a little short. Hold on. Let's see if I can, a little too tall. All right. I'll just stand on my tippy toes. Okay. So a few months ago, I think it was September, I did work on a sickle cell awareness story. I worked and I was able to interview a sickle cell patient, someone who was dealing with that, and that really opened my eyes to just the challenges, unbelievable challenges that come along with this debilitating sometimes disease. And the patient that I had spoken to, she lost her ability to walk because the sickle cell disease had essentially the loss of blood flow is what led to her loss in her hip. So it really attacks the hips from what I have at least seen, because again, we have a story tonight that's going to talk about a situation where a sickle cell patient also lost her ability to walk, temporarily because of what happened. So, and because of the disease. But now the FDA has approved 2 new treatments for sickle cell trait. And this is a big deal because up until now, there hasn't been any cures. They've just had to go through blood transfusions. They've had to go through other treatments that only last a few weeks or a few months. And now the FDA is approving 2 new treatments that could be a huge medical breakthrough for sickle cell patients. So our Joshua Skinner is the one who told us about this story. It really stuck out to me, and he did an unbelievable job. So I'm going to let him pick up the story from here and tell you about the 2 new therapies that were just approved by the FDA.
Yeah, on Friday, the FDA announced 2 new treatments for people suffering from sickle cell disease, marking a major breakthrough for the often debilitating condition.
Simply put, sickle cell is a deadly disease where red blood cells are misshapen and clog up veins. There are roughly 100,000 Americans suffering from SCD, a disproportionate number of them African American. And until now, treatment options have been limited.
Initially, I'm very excited about it.
Tabitha McGee with the Sickle Cell Foundation of Georgia has been following advances in treatment for years.
It's a very chronic disease. It's a very painful disease, and it's often treated with opiates.
Now, the word cure is being thrown around, with the FDA approval of 2 gene therapy treatments. Those treatments are approved for people 12 and older. One treatment involves CRISPR technology, which uses a patient's stem cells to edit their DNA. The news comes as a blessing to Mapiller Dawn, who has 3 teenage daughters with SCD.
It feels like Christmas came early.
One of Dawn's daughters, Deej, had a stroke at age 7 and has received over 100 blood transfusions. Her eldest daughter, Thule, is hard to transfuse and does not qualify for the new treatment.
She's currently 19. She just had her hip replaced. This is a 19-year-old who had her hip replaced, and is due to complications from sickle cell disease.
And with a price tag in excess of $1 million, it's also a question of who can afford it.
Is it really a cure if it's not accessible?
And that's where the next frontier for treating sickle cell lies.
We have to start talking about how is this going to get paid for.
Those conversations between advocates, insurance companies, and Medicare and Medicaid are just beginning. But this step, this cure, represents a major breakthrough and hope for solving a disease previously unsolvable.
I cannot understate how just amazing and wonderful this is.
I'm Joshua Skinner, Atlanta News First.
Yeah, on Friday, the FDA announced 2 new treatments for people suffering from sickle cell disease, marking a major breakthrough for the often debilitating condition.
Simply put, sickle cell is a deadly disease.
All right, so you heard there from our Joshua Skinner So hopefully this is something that will become readily accessible for patients. The cost was something that was a concern, but we're going to continue to track to see if this does become something that is really a impactful medical breakthrough that we are seeing as it relates to sickle cell disease. So keep an eye on that story. Read up on it more on Atlanta News First if you want more details. But let's move along because this is a story that I thought was worth an update because we've covered it so much. About 10 days ago, you may remember we talked about a story about a person who lit themselves on fire outside of the Israeli Consulate as an act of what police say was political protest. Now, that person unfortunately made it to the hospital, but had 100% of their body was dealing with third-degree burns. So they were left in critical condition. We have not gotten any updates on that person from police, from family members. We don't know their identity. But we do know that there was a security guard by the name of Michael Harris. Let's show you some pictures of him because he did try to jump in to stop the person from lighting the match after they were seen dousing themselves in gasoline outside of the Israeli consulate. And as a result of his act of heroism, he also suffered third-degree burns to his arms as well as his legs. In these pictures you're going to see right now on your screen, there's Michael Harris, and these are the burns to his arms and his legs. We're told tonight, though, the good news is he is back home with his family members. They told us that he had to get some skin grafts, of course, but now 10 days later he can at least recover at home. So this is some scene video from outside the Israeli consulate in Midtown when police initially responded to this. And so far, we still again have not gotten any new updates as it relates to this scene, the people involved. It's just been the latest details I just shared with you. That's all we know. But again, the good news is Michael Harris is back home. I should also point out that as it relates to the person that lit themselves on fire, they did say that that person, they told us that they did find a Palestinian flag at the scene, and that contributed to the indication for investigators as to why they also believe this was an act of political protest. They did not divulge, I should say, any further into the details about what contributed to that. But as you know, there are tensions in the Middle East right now as it relates to the Israel and Hamas conflict, and there has been a number of protests all around the city for weeks as it relates to the war in Israel or the war in Gaza because of Hamas and Israel. So we're keeping a close eye on if we can get any new details on the person who was in critical condition following that, and if we do, you'll hear about it, of course, right here on Atlanta News First. So let's move on. Let's go to the next story. This story is just one that we absolutely hate telling you about. One person is dead, and two others are just in shock tonight. Two family members made it out of a house fire in Coweta County. Let's take you to the scene. We did manage to get some photos shared with us from the Noonan Times-Herald newspaper, and these just remarkable, stunning images of this just massive plume that engulfed this house in Coweta County. Just devastating. You can only imagine how these two family members are feeling right now. That one person that was also inside the house did not make it, according to fire officials. Now, police and fire crews have still not told us whether or not the third person that was inside the home was related to the other two that made it to the hospital. They only said that the two that made it to the hospital were related and were family members, but we still don't know if the third person was related to them in any way or maybe was just a friend. So we're still working to get those details, and we let's loop that again. Yeah, so we did send our Atlanta News First reporter, Yasmina Alston, to Coweta County to go back to the scene to try to talk to neighbors and to try to talk to family members, if we can, who were in this devastating situation. So, it's so close to the holidays, just a super sad story, and a small local community again, and I imagine the community is really going to rally around this family because this is something that will be living right in their neighborhood, a memory that no one will forget, certainly. So look for that story tonight in our newscast, and we also have a cut-in coming up at 5 o'clock, so at the halftime of this football game, and you will see myself and my co-anchor Carly Barnett. We will bring you an update on some of the other stories we're working on and just other stuff that we're getting into our newsroom at this time. But again, prayers for this family tonight. Just unbelievably sad. But we will get an update from our reporter at the scene later on this evening. So thank you so much for joining me here at the First Alert Desk. I really appreciate it. And thanks for bearing with me. This is off the cusp. Really just we get our notes. We get these stories for you out as quickly as possible. And yeah, so have a great rest of your evening. I know it's rainy outside. Not fun, but hopefully that will be clearing up here pretty soon. Make sure you have your Atlanta News First weather app, because that's really going to time out your day for Monday. And also we'll have our meteorologist in-house tonight also breaking down those details for your work week. All right, have a great night.